The applause started before my brain accepted what I had just heard. Blake Whitmore, not me. Blake Whitmore, the man who had been at Harbor Point Systems for 14 months and once asked whether our claims reconciliation engine ran on the cloud or inside the database, had just been promoted to Director of Core Infrastructure. I sat in the third row of the all-hands meeting with my hands folded in my lap, smiling the way women in corporate America learn to smile when someone younger, louder, and significantly less useful walks away with the title they earned. If you're curious how Blake's big promotion became his downfall, like this video, where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Because what happened next made everything worse. Our CEO, Martin Hale, beamed at Blake from the stage. Blake has brought fresh strategic vision to the infrastructure organization, he said. Fresh was one word for it. Unburdened by technical understanding was another. Blake stood, buttoned his navy suit jacket, and gave the room a humble little nod, as if he had not spent the last year converting my documentation into executive talking points. Then he turned around and looked directly at me. That was the moment I knew this was not just an oversight. It was a message. After the meeting, he caught me near the coffee machine. "Vivian," he said, using the gentle tone people reserve for layoffs and poorly trained dogs, "I know this might feel disappointing, but you're still absolutely critical to the team." "Am I?" "Of course. In fact, I need you to prepare the full Claims Bridge architecture packet for North Star Health Alliance by Friday. Something polished, executive-friendly. I'll be presenting it." There it was. He got the title. I got the homework. I looked at his expensive watch, his perfect smile, and the confidence of a man standing on a bridge he did not know I had built. "Sure," I said. "I'll prepare exactly what my role requires." That night, I opened my employment contract for the first time in years. One line stopped me cold. Senior Systems Engineer Advisory Support only, not executive accountability. I read it twice. Then I smiled. Blake had just been promoted into responsibility for a system only I understood. I want to make this clear, this is a fictional story, with some details supported and developed using artificial intelligence to enhance drama, emotion, and highlight thought-provoking messages. Now, let's continue. That line in my contract sent me back 9 years, to the day Harbor Point hired me, because ClaimsBridge was a billing bonfire with a login screen. Back then, the system crashed every month-end close. Clinics waited days for reimbursements. Hospitals called support like it was a hostage negotiation. A duplicate claim bug froze $3.4 million in payments and made our CFO age before lunch. I was brought in as the quiet fixer, corporate language for, "Please save us, but don't expect anyone to remember your name." So I rebuilt it. I rewrote the reconciliation engine, redesigned the audit trail, created failover rules, and documented every ugly decision by year 3. ClaimsBridge was processing $68 million a day with fewer outages than our coffee machine. I trained junior engineers, wrote runbooks thick enough to injure someone, and answered calls at 2 a.m. because apparently my phone number was part of the disaster recovery plan. Recognition came in generous forms. Of course, a great job in Slack, a gift card after a holiday outage. Once, Martin called me the backbone of the company, then gave the speaking slot to a director who thought SQL was a compliance framework. Then Blake arrived. He spoke fluent executive, operational maturity, strategic velocity, platform narrative, beautiful phrases, polished and empty, like a luxury apartment with no plumbing. He sat in meetings while I explained risks, nodded thoughtfully, then repeated my warnings as if they had descended from Mount PowerPoint. 8 months before his promotion, I flagged that our legacy payer API could misclassify high-volume claims during batch retries. Blake waved it off. "Vivian, we can't keep letting edge cases slow innovation." 3 weeks later, that exact edge case hit. I fixed it overnight. By morning, Blake emailed leadership my team stabilized the platform after the promotion. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened the nomination packet. There it was, my diagrams, my language, my architecture notes, and Blake listed as the author of Harbor Point's transformation strategy. Seeing my work inside Blake's promotion packet did not make me quit. Quitting would have been dramatic, and Blake loved drama as long as someone else handled the consequences. I chose something far more dangerous to a company built on invisible labor. I followed my job description. On Monday, I arrived at 9 o'clock sharp, not 7:12 with overnight error logs open. I did not open the monitoring dashboard before breakfast. I did not scan failed batches just in case. I answered emails addressed to me, updated the compliance notes assigned to me, and ignored 3 Slack messages that began with quick question. Corporate code for unpaid consulting. At 10:40, Mia from Platform Engineering appeared beside my desk. Pale and clutching her laptop. Vivian. The payer retry service is throwing inconsistent statuses. You've seen this before. Right, I had. Twice. Once on Thanksgiving. While Blake was probably posting about gratitude, the runbook covers that. I said, Section 6.3. If the behavior differs, open an incident ticket and tag the service owner. She blinked. You're not going to just look, I am looking, I said, pointing at my assigned work, at what I'm responsible for. By noon, the quick question had become a thread with 14 replies. 2 confused engineers. And Blake adding, let's align on root cause, which was impressive because he had not yet aligned with the cause. At 5 o'clock, I closed my laptop. People looked up, as if a fire alarm had learned to walk. That evening, Blake messaged me, Vivian, during this leadership transition, I need you to be more flexible. Ash replied, absolutely. Please submit any additional requests through the official assignment system so priorities and accountability are documented. He did not respond for 11 minutes. That silence was the first honest thing he had given me. Blake's silence lasted until Wednesday morning, when his new accelerated modernization patch went live and immediately performed like a raccoon operating a forklift. At 8:07, ClaimsBridge marked 12,400 insurance claims as processed, even though the payment transfers had not completed. By 8:19, $1.7 million was sitting in accounting limbo. Clinics could see approval notices, hospitals could not see deposits, and customer support began receiving calls from billing managers who sounded one bad sentence away from litigation. I learned this at 9 o'clock when I walked in holding coffee. Blake was already outside my desk, tie crooked, laptop open, leadership aura visibly buffering. Vivian! We have a critical incident. Is there a ticket assigned to me? He stared. This is not the time for bureaucracy. No, I said, setting down my bag. This is exactly when bureaucracy becomes evidence. His jaw tightened. You've fixed worse without paperwork. Yes. And last quarter, you told leadership we needed disciplined process maturity. Congratulations. We're mature now. By 9:12, an incident ticket appeared. I reviewed the logs, traced the failure to a retry status mapping Blake's team had approved without reading the dependency notes, and wrote a remediation plan, freeze outbound confirmations, reconcile the affected batch, restore payment states, then submit a compliance notice before restarting the queue. Blake hovered behind me. Can you just execute it after change approval? That takes hours. So does explaining to auditors why we changed financial records without approval. For once. No one argued. Compliance approved the emergency change at 11:46. I implemented the fix in 43 minutes, validated the claim states, and documented every step like the boring little liability shield I had become. At 2:18, Blake sent leadership an update, suggesting the incident experienced delays due to delayed technical escalation. Bold move. At 2:24, compliance replied with the system timeline. Ticket assigned to Vivian Stone at 9:12. Vivian response logged at 9:18. Root cause documented at 9:41. 6 minutes late to his lie. Blake discovered the logs could read. After compliance embarrassed him with timestamps, Blake stopped pretending this was about efficiency. By Thursday afternoon, He had discovered the oldest management tool in the building, forwarding his insecurity to HR. The subject line was beautiful in the way a leaking ceiling is beautiful. Concerns regarding change resistance and incident responsiveness. I was invited to a meeting at 3:30. Blake sat beside Dana from HR, wearing the expression of a man bravely surviving consequences he had personally ordered. Dana folded her hands. Vivian, Blake has raised concerns that you may be struggling to adapt to the new leadership structure. Interesting, I said. Which part? Blake leaned forward. You've become less collaborative, slower to engage. The team feels unsupported. Corporate translation, the vending machine stopped giving free snacks. I opened my folder. Not a dramatic folder, just 12 pages of dates, tickets, emails, and my job description. I slid the first page across the table. That is the incident timeline from Wednesday. This is my official role description. This is Blake's email from last month, instructing the team to follow formal escalation channels. These are 37 after-hours interventions I performed in the past year without assignment, approval, or compensation. Dana's face changed halfway through page 4. Blake tried to smile. We're not here to debate history. No, I said. We're here because history became inconvenient. The meeting ended with no corrective action, which in HR language meant Blake had thrown a grenade and forgotten to pull the pin. So he improvised. The next morning, he announced that no engineer should come to me directly. All technical questions had to route through him first. By lunch, a simple claim status bug had 3 owners, 2 conflicting priorities, and 1 Slack thread where Blake wrote, "Let's circle back on the data layer," while discussing a user interface problem. At 4:55, Mia stopped beside my desk. Voice low. Vivian, he's editing the North Star audit deck. I looked up. He's removing your name from the architecture credits. If you think Blake was right to report me to HR, comment necessary. But if you think he abused his power to hide failure, comment he needs to be exposed. I want to know which side you're on. Mia's warning should have made me angry. Strangely, it made me calm. Blake was not stealing my work because he was clever. He was stealing it because, so far, nobody had asked him to explain it without me standing nearby, like corporate life support. I could have marched into Martin's office and accused him. That would have been satisfying for about 12 seconds. Then Blake would have lowered his voice, used words like disgruntled and alignment, and turned my evidence into attitude. So I gave him exactly what he wanted. At 7:18 that evening, I uploaded the full North Star architecture packet to the shared audit folder. It included the claims bridge data flow diagrams, the dual ledger reconciliation model, failover procedures, dependency maps, and risk notes for every weak point Blake had dismissed over the past year. But I did not send a flat PDF. I sent the source files. Every document carried version history. Every diagram had embedded author tags. Every risk note linked back to the original ticket. Every architecture decision record included dates, reviewers, and comments Blake had left unread for months. If he wanted to erase me, he would need to erase the building's memory. At 7:41, Blake replied, "Great. I'll streamline this for executive presentation." Streamline, a lovely word meaning, remove the person who did the work. The next morning, I saw his revised deck. My name was gone from the contributor slide. The phrase prepared under Blake Whitmore's leadership appeared 3 times. Because apparently theft needs branding, I downloaded the deck, saved the email, and did nothing. That was the trap. Not drama, not revenge, just evidence. Waiting patiently in places Blake never thought to check. 2 hours before the North Star review. I received the attendee list. Their lead auditor was Elaine Porter. I stared at the name, then laughed once. Elaine and I had worked together 6 years earlier. She knew my documentation style before Blake knew where the server logs lived. This would be interesting. The North Star review began at 10 a.m., and Blake entered the conference room with the confidence of a man about to present stolen homework to the teacher who assigned it. North Star's renewal was worth $96 million over 3 years. Losing it would not sink Harbor Point, but it would punch a hole large enough for the board to start asking unfriendly questions. Naturally, Blake opened with a smile. Over the past year, I've led the modernization of ClaimsBridge into a more scalable, audit-ready platform, he said. I sat near the wall, hands folded, watching Elaine Porter read slide 2. Her eyebrow moved, just a little. It was the professional version of a smoke alarm. She let Blake talk for 8 minutes about resilient workflows and operational confidence. Then she asked, why did Harbor Point choose dual ledger reconciliation instead of single ledger rollback for high-volume payer batches? Blake nodded slowly, buying time with his neck. That decision was about flexibility, he said. Elaine waited. Flexibility against which failure mode? His eyes flicked toward me. I looked at him with all the warmth of a closed bank vault. Well, he said, the broader architecture supports multiple scenarios. Elaine clicked open the original architecture decision record. My name sat at the top, dated 7 years earlier. I'd like Vivian Stone to answer. The room changed temperature. I stood and explained the choice. Plainly single ledger rollback created legal exposure when payer confirmations arrived out of sequence. Dual ledger reconciliation preserved auditability, isolated disputed claims, and prevented duplicate payments during retry storms. I walked through the 2021 incident simulation, the compliance memo, and the controls that had prevented roughly $23 million in payment errors over 5 years. When I finished, nobody spoke. Elaine closed her laptop. North Star has serious concerns about the accuracy of Harbor Point's technical leadership representations. Blake's face emptied. By 4:30, North Star paused the $96 million renewal and requested an internal investigation into who actually owned the ClaimsBridge architecture. Suddenly, everyone knew exactly why Blake had panicked. By Monday morning, Blake had reinvented himself as the victim, which was impressive considering the crime scene was mostly his calendar invites. The internal investigation meeting included Martin, our CEO, Dana from HR, Carla, the CFO, 2 company attorneys, Blake, and me. Blake opened first, because men like him consider silence an admission of someone else's guilt. Vivian intentionally embarrassed Harbor Point in front of North Star. He said, her behavior was retaliatory and damaging. I waited until he finished. Then I plugged in my laptop. My response will be chronological. The first slide was simple, a 42-page timeline, reduced to dates, documents, and system records. I showed the original ClaimsBridge architecture files with my author tags. Then Blake's revised audit deck, where my name had disappeared. Then his email saying he would streamline the materials. Corporate theft, apparently, came with verbs. Blake shifted in his chair. Those were leadership edits. Removing authorship is not editing. I said, it's laundering. Next came the ignored warnings, 6 documented risk memos about the payer retry service, each marked deferred by Blake or left untouched in review. Then the $1.7 million incident timeline ticket assigned to me at 9:12, my response at 9:18, root cause at 9:41. His accusation of delayed escalation appeared on the next slide, followed by compliance correcting him in writing. Dana stopped taking notes for a moment. One attorney leaned forward. Blake tried a new angle. If Vivian's knowledge was so critical, why didn't she train anyone? I clicked once. 17 proposals appeared: mentorship rotations, incident shadowing, architecture review sessions, documentation workshops, 6 years of requests, all postponed, deprioritized, or buried under next quarter planning. Blake's name appeared on the last 3 rejections. The room went quiet enough to hear the projector fan. Then Carla, the CFO, cleared her throat. There's more. North Star didn't only pause renewal, they issued a penalty notice for misrepresentation of technical governance. Blake finally looked scared. Not misunderstood, not offended, scared. And for the first time all morning, nobody in that room looked at me again. After Carla mentioned the penalty notice, consequences began arriving with the polite efficiency of a finance department sharpening knives. By Tuesday, Blake's management access was suspended. By Wednesday, legal had opened a review of every technical presentation he had delivered. By Friday, they found 9 strategy documents where his name appeared as architecture lead on work he had not designed, reviewed, or understood beyond the title slide. Watching it unfold was not joyful exactly. It was cleaner than joy. It felt like air returning to a room after someone finally opened a window. The numbers were ugly. The payment incident had cost $1.7 million in remediation, credits, and emergency support. North Star's penalty notice carried a potential $4.2 million exposure. The $96 million renewal remained frozen. 3 smaller clients requested assurance letters. Martin stopped saying fresh leadership energy in meetings, which I considered a small public service. Blake tried one final performance. In a closed meeting with Martin, Carla, Dana, and me. He leaned forward. "I can fix this," he said, "but I need Vivian to work with me instead of against me." There it was again. The old magic trick. Turn accountability into a woman's cooperation problem. I looked at him and said, "You don't need me to work with you. You need me to keep absorbing the consequences of decisions you made without understanding them." His face tightened. I continued, "Because after 9 years, apparently I had earned a full paragraph. I warned you about the retry service. You ignored it. I documented the architecture. You removed my name. I followed escalation procedures. You accused me of delay. This is not a collaboration issue. This is a competence issue. No one rescued him." 2 hours later, Blake was removed from the director role, stripped of his leadership bonus, and placed on administrative leave pending final review. Corporate justice rarely wears a cape. Sometimes it wears a calendar invite titled Organizational Update. That afternoon, Martin called me into his office. "We'd like you to step into Blake's role," he said. I smiled. "Not like this." I said, "I have conditions." I did not want Blake's title. Titles, I had learned, were often decorative stickers placed on empty boxes. I wanted authority, protection, and a system that could survive without turning my life into unpaid infrastructure. So I gave Martin my conditions: Chief Systems Architect, a 55% salary increase, equity refresh, written veto power over any change touching ClaimsBridge's core payment logic, and a mandatory knowledge transfer program with dedicated engineering hours. Not when we find time, which in corporate language means never. Martin looked like he had swallowed a budget spreadsheet. "That's a lot." "No," I said. "That's what the company was already taking. I'm just putting it on an invoice." They accepted. 3 months later, 12 engineers had completed the first architecture rotation. Mia handled a retry state failure without calling me once. She documented the fix, explained the risk, and caught a second issue before deployment. I nearly applauded, but I settled for leaving one comment: "Good catch. Now teach it." North Star returned to the table and signed the renewal with one condition: I would oversee technical governance for the first 18 months. Apparently, customers enjoy knowing the person who understands the bridge is not locked in the basement. Blake disappeared into strategic consulting, which is linked in for unemployed with adjectives. But his collapse was not my real victory. My victory was leaving at 5:04, watching the system continue running, and realizing I had finally stopped being the only person who understood it. That was freedom. For once. Completely. I spent years believing that quiet sacrifice would eventually be recognized. But real respect began only when I stopped giving away my expertise for free. My own experience taught me that boundaries are not bitterness. They are how we show people the true cost of our contribution. From my own story, I learned 5 lessons. First, I learned that hard work without visibility can easily be stolen by louder people. Second, I learned that documentation protects not only the company, but also the person who built the work. Third, I learned that doing only what my role requires can reveal how much extra labor I was silently carrying. Fourth, I learned that real leadership is not taking credit. It is creating systems where others can grow. Fifth, I learned that the best revenge is not destruction, but forcing the truth to stand where lies used to sit. What about you? Did this story leave you with a lesson of your own? Share it in the comments. I truly want to read it. And if this story made you think of someone who deserves to be valued, please like, subscribe, and share it. You never know who might need this reminder today.
Welcome to Boardroom Revenge Stories, a channel focused on workplace conflict, corporate betrayal, power struggles, and quiet justice. Our stories follow a structured workflow to deliver a consistent, immersive experience. We start by analyzing real discussions on Reddit, Facebook, Quora, and blogs. Next, we craft original scripts using AI tools like ChatGPT. We then use 11 Labs to transform text into high-quality voice and edit everything in CapCut for a smooth, cinematic finish. Thumbnails are designed with Canva, and every video is carefully reviewed before release. These stories go beyond entertainment, revealing how power truly works and how justice quietly unfolds.